very validating, and it's a big part of why I do this. We spend a lot of time.
Keith Bynum and Evan Thomas crafted their careers and their relationship under the public's watchful eye. As stars of HGTV's Bargain Block, they weren't just restoring Detroit's abandoned homes. They were telling a story of creativity, resilience, and partnership. But when Keith recently spoke out, confirming the rumors that had been following them for months, the narrative changed. What had once been dismissed as fan speculation now carried real significance, exposing a side of television fame that's rarely shown. Stay with us as we unravel the rumors and reveal the truth. The rise of Keith and Evan.
Interesting choice, Shay.
Yeah, this isn't like you to pick up something quite so busted.
When Keith Bynum and Evan Thomas first graced HGTV, they immediately became a duo. Viewers couldn't help but root for. Their chemistry was undeniable, their humor disarming, and their shared mission clear. Breathe new life into Detroit's forgotten neighborhoods, one home at a time. Bargain Block wasn't just another home renovation show. It was about rescuing rundown properties, purchasing them for a fraction of their market value, and turning them into beautiful, livable homes that would not only uplift the buyers, but entire streets. This transformation didn't just happen on TV. It was built long before the cameras started rolling. Keith, a designer with a passion for bold and unconventional interiors, had already carved out a name for himself in the design world. Evan, on the other hand, was a builder and project manager, his sharp business sense complementing Keith's creativity. Together, their relationship, both personal and professional, became the foundation of their success. Unlike some TV duos whose dynamic feels manufactured for the camera, Keith and Evan's bond was authentic, shaped by shared ambitions and mutual respect. Detroit became their canvas and, in many ways, their testing ground. The city, known for its economic struggles and abandoned properties, presented significant challenges. But Keith and Evan saw opportunities where others saw decay. Bargain Block didn't just focus on dramatic before and after shots, it also showcased the hard work, setbacks, and late nights that went into every transformation. Their deep connection to the community added a layer of sincerity that viewers quickly picked up on. They weren't outsiders swooping in for a quick profit. They were living in the very neighborhoods they were revitalizing. By the time Bargain Block debuted, fans had fallen for more than just the beautiful renovations. Keith's adventurous artistic designs pushed the boundaries of HGTV's more traditional styles. He wasn't afraid to experiment with bold color schemes, whimsical murals, and unexpected textures. Evan, on the other hand, played the steady counterpart. While Keith dreamt up creative ideas, Evan grounded those dreams in the practical realities of budgets, timelines, and construction. This balance between imagination and execution made for compelling TV and highlighted why their partnership worked. Keith's bold vision paired perfectly with Evan's ability to make it a reality, brick by brick. But their story went beyond just design and renovation. For the first time in HGTV's history, an openly gay couple was at the forefront of a major show. In a network traditionally dominated by wholesome suburban families, Bargain Block was something new, something real. Fans connected not only to their design work, but to the openness and vulnerability they shared on screen. They weren't playing roles for TV, they were simply being themselves, and that resonated deeply with their audience. Despite the growing fame and success, behind the scenes, the work was grueling. Renovating homes is hard enough, but doing it under the pressure of a television production schedule was an entirely different beast. Deadlines were tight, budgets were even tighter, and the constant demand for dramatic reveals added an intense pressure on Keith and Evan. Fans, ever attentive on social media, began to notice moments of tension, subtle signs of exhaustion, and whispers started to circulate. Could they keep up with the pace? Were they stretching themselves too thin? Even in those early days, they managed to maintain the image of harmony and success. The show brought new visibility to their business, 9 design-plus homes, and soon they were regarded as HGTV regulars alongside big names like Chip and Joanna Gaines. Media outlets painted them as an inspiring example of love, creativity, and business flourishing hand in hand. To the casual viewer, all appeared well. However, beneath the polished exterior, a different reality began to emerge. The demands of TV, coupled with the financial pressures tied to HGTV's exposure, began to take a toll. While fans reveled in the transformations, Keith and Evan were dealing with mounting debt, stress, and the burden of a business model that relied heavily on ratings and network decisions. Rumors started to surface, whispers that something wasn't quite as smooth as it seemed. Fans, increasingly curious, began to wonder what was really happening behind the scenes. Was there more to the story than met the eye? At first, the rumors were just that, small whispers in the background. But as Bargain Block continued to grow in popularity, the chatter intensified. While most of it was positive, praise for their creativity, their unique style, and their ability to balance love and business, there was a growing sense that something deeper was at play. The closer they were watched, the more scrutiny came their way. And soon, the rumors that had started quietly began to take on a life of their own. The beginning of the rumors.
Thank you. Let's show you upstairs.
All right.
Nice.
One of the first threads of speculation surrounding Keith and Evan revolved around the immense workload they faced. Bargain Block wasn't just about filming a few renovations. It involved flipping multiple homes within tight time frames, all while cameras captured every moment. Viewers who understood the realities of construction timelines began to question how sustainable this intense production schedule could be. Online forums and HGTV fan groups buzzed with concerns about how much pressure Keith and Evan were under. Some wondered if they were secretly struggling to keep up, and if the mounting stress was causing friction behind the scenes. Financial issues were another hot topic. Unlike HGTV giants like Chip and Joanna Gaines, who had already established large business empires, Keith and Evan were still heavily reliant on the show for visibility and revenue. Fans pointed out that renovating homes in Detroit came with its own set of risks. Properties were cheap to buy, but restoring them was expensive, and resale values weren't always guaranteed. This led to whispers that Keith and Evan might be overextending themselves, investing resources into homes that didn't always turn a profit. While the narrative of two people rebuilding a city made for inspiring television, fans began questioning whether the numbers added up. Then came the subtler, more personal rumors, which thrived in the absence of clear information. On Instagram, fans closely analyzed Keith and Evan's posts, dissecting every detail. A photo of Keith looking worn out sparked speculation that he was under too much strain. A period when Evan appeared less frequently in photos led to rumors about the state of their relationship. Fans even debated the significance of offhand comments in interviews, interpreting them as signs of trouble. Most of these theories were unfounded, but it highlighted how deeply invested viewers were, not just in the renovations, but in the personal lives of the couple at the center of it all. Adding fuel to the fire was HGTV's handling of publicity. Networks often portray their stars as flawless, conflict-free figures, presenting an idealized version of reality. For Keith and Evan, this meant that any cracks, whether a moment of tension caught on camera or a candid admission of exhaustion, stood out more than they might have for others. Instead of reassuring fans, these rare glimpses of stress only deepened suspicions that something more was going on behind the scenes. HGTV wasn't in the habit of airing dirty laundry, but fans increasingly suspected that the network's silence meant there was something significant being hidden. Speculation mounted as the seasons wore on. Some fans pointed to the sheer scale of the work. How could two people, even with help, keep up such a high output without burning out? Others questioned the long-term viability of flipping homes in Detroit, a city with its own set of challenges and complex housing dynamics. The idea that Keith and Evan might be struggling financially began to gain traction. Some even speculated that HGTV itself was becoming impatient, possibly pushing for changes or threatening cancellation. What made these rumors believable was their plausibility. Fans had watched other HGTV stars exit under unclear circumstances. Television, they knew, could be brutal, and behind every smiling host was a grueling production cycle and demanding executives. As they saw Keith venture into increasingly ambitious designs, intricate murals, eccentric color schemes, some wondered if it was a sign of creative frustration. Was he pushing the limits of the format because he felt constrained by it? Was there tension between him and Evan over how far to take things? The rumors weren't malicious, but they painted a picture of mounting pressure behind the scenes. Keith and Evan weren't actively quelling the gossip. Although they maintained a united front in public appearances, they occasionally acknowledged the stress. Keith would joke about being exhausted or about the constant demands of flipping homes for a TV show. Evan hinted at the challenges of balancing everything. To casual listeners, these comments were lighthearted. To the rumor mills, however, they were evidence that trouble was brewing. Every admission of fatigue seemed like confirmation that Keith and Evan were nearing their breaking point. By the time the rumors reached their peak, it was clear that speculation had become its own parallel storyline. Fans were no longer just interested in the houses. They were consumed with wondering what was going on behind the cameras. Would Keith and Evan continue? Could they survive the pressure? Was their relationship strong enough to weather the strain of television fame? Ironically, none of this drama was visible on screen, yet it overshadowed the actual renovations. Despite everything, Keith and Evan kept working, kept filming, and continued presenting their best selves on camera. But the rumors didn't go away. In fact, they seemed to build with each passing season, with the expectation that sooner or later, something would give. When Bargain Block was officially canceled, those who had been speculating felt vindicated. To them, it wasn't just a network decision. It was proof that the whispers had always carried some truth. By early 2025, the speculation about Keith and Evan had reached a crescendo. Fans sensed something was changing, though the couple stayed tight-lipped. Then came the news that confirmed their unease. Keith's reaction.
No furnace, no water heater.
No water heater. It
Yep.
stinks.
The most striking moment came when Keith Bynum broke his silence with a sharp critique of the television industry. In an interview following the announcement of Bargain Block's cancellation, he didn't hold back, saying that TV was full of some of the worst people he'd ever encountered. His comments struck like a thunderclap, as HGTV stars rarely speak out so openly, especially against an industry that values its family-friendly, polished image. For Keith to express such raw frustration was more than just a moment of disappointment. It revealed deep disillusionment. Fans who had long suspected that the couple's experience behind the scenes was far from ideal now had confirmation from the man at the center of it all. Keith also openly discussed the economic realities that had fueled much of the speculation about the couple's situation. For years, fans had wondered about the sustainability of Bargain Block, given the risks associated with flipping homes in Detroit and the constant costs of renovation. Keith admitted that the show wasn't just a creative outlet, it was their primary financial lifeline. Their business, 9 Design Plus Homes, had become heavily reliant on the exposure and income the show brought them. Without the show, their business model was fragile at best. This was a striking revelation because HGTV often portrays its stars as effortlessly successful entrepreneurs with TV careers that are just one part of a flourishing empire. For Keith and Evan, however, television wasn't an add-on. It was the foundation. When the network pulled the plug, it wasn't just a programming change. It was a blow that reverberated through every aspect of their livelihood. Keith also took the opportunity to address another long-running rumor, the state of his relationship with Evan. For years, fans had speculated about possible strain between the couple. Social media posts were scrutinized, and fleeting moments where they weren't seen together sparked theories of discord. But Keith made it clear that while the pressures of the business and the industry had been brutal, his partnership with Evan remained rock solid. If anything, The challenges of Bargain Block had strengthened their bond rather than weakened it. Keith's candidness extended to discussing the toll of constant public scrutiny. The workload, he admitted, had been crushing. Renovating homes at the pace demanded by production was unsustainable, and he acknowledged that exhaustion had been a constant companion. The pressure to meet network deadlines and satisfy viewers left little room for recovery. Fans who had noticed the tired eyes and strained smiles were right. It wasn't just a TV persona. The reality was far more grueling than what was presented on screen. Keith's honesty about the frustrations and the emotional toll of working in television was rare for someone in the HGTV spotlight. The network tends to present its stars as cheerful, stress-free professionals who thrive under pressure. Keith, however, shattered that illusion. His blunt remarks painted a more complex picture, one where success and struggle coexisted. In doing so, he humanized both himself and Evan in a way that few reality TV stars ever dare to. His transparency resonated deeply with fans who appreciated his willingness to confront the truth head-on. Keith also addressed the emotional impact of the cancellation itself. He and Evan had poured so much into the show, creatively, personally, and financially, that the abrupt end of Bargain Block left them both hurt. There was no graceful exit, no chance to wrap up the show on their terms. They were simply told the ride was over. For two people who had invested so much, the sudden end stung, confirming what many fans had suspected. The cancellation wasn't just a business decision, it was a deeply personal blow. What is next for Keith?
Not to mention, I think another Evan original.
Another Evan original.
Hey, beautiful.
So good.
Following the cancellation, fans flocked to social media to show their support. For many, Bargain Block had been more than just a home renovation show. It was a celebration of Detroit's potential, a city often overshadowed by its struggles. Keith and Evan had given the city a national stage, highlighting its beauty and promise without resorting to the usual cliches. Fans expressed their gratitude for how the show had reshaped their perception of Detroit and for the way it had inspired homeowners and young designers alike. However, while the emotional support was overwhelming, the practical realities were more pressing. Without HGTV's financial backing, Keith and Evan had to slow down their business operations. The constant rush to renovate multiple homes at once was no longer sustainable. They began to scale back, taking on fewer projects and focusing on quality over quantity. This shift allowed them to breathe and focus on what they love, creating homes at a more manageable pace. Yet this recalibration came with its own set of financial challenges. For years, their business had been conditioned to rely on the exposure and funding HGTV provided. With that revenue stream gone, they were forced to adapt and rebuild. Despite these challenges, Keith and Evan found new opportunities to use their platform. They began exploring collaborations outside of HGTV, diving into digital content, streaming projects, and independent ventures, where they could retain more creative control. Keith's candid remarks about his experiences also highlighted just how rare such honesty is in the HGTV world. While many stars exit quietly, citing new opportunities or a desire to spend more time with family, Keith chose transparency. His blunt comments resonated beyond HGTV fans, with others in adjacent industries quietly acknowledging his frustrations, though few dared to be as direct. The fallout from the cancellation reshaped Keith and Evan's relationship with their audience. Freed from the constraints of network image management, they began to share more authentically on social media. Their posts weren't polished marketing tools. They offered glimpses into their real process, the messy side of renovation, the joy of small victories, and the frustrations of rebuilding without a safety net. This authenticity deepened fans' loyalty. The end of Bargain Block wasn't just the end of a show, it was the beginning of a new chapter. Keith and Evan made it clear that while television had been a powerful platform, it wasn't the only one. Their design company, 9 Design Plus Homes, remained active and growing, albeit at a more deliberate pace. And though the cancellation was a huge blow, it also gave them the freedom to chart a new path, one where they could make their own rules and continue creating in ways that felt true to themselves. In the end, the cancellation of Bargain Block didn't mark the end of Keith and Evan's journey. It was a pivot, one that forced them to confront their past and rebuild their future on their own terms.